Evening, everyone. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Huge day in politics. So for more on that, let's bring in our guest, Paul Steinhauser. He's a national political reporter, aptly based in New Hampshire. He's also former political editor at CNN. Okay, Paul, as always, thank you. Let's go through these kind of candidate by candidate. And first, you have to help me out here because I don't get the Bernie love here in that, for folks who don't know, I know you do, he's been a fixture in Washington for 30 years. It's not that he's come out of the blue, both in the House and now in the Senate, and he wasn't really taken seriously. The shot that Hillary took at him was that he never got any serious legislation passed is a fair one. But even after 5 years ago, and now again, now he's making huge inroads, and it's much more than just geography in New Hampshire. He's really the only movement candidate Democrats have. Can you explain why?
He's got a history here. Listen, his supporters from 2016, and remember, here in the New Hampshire primary, he walloped Hillary Clinton by 22 points 4 years ago. Those supporters never wavered. They stuck with him from one election to the other. And especially in the late fall when we saw Elizabeth Warren starting to fade after her answers on how she would pay for and implement Medicare for all. That didn't ring so well with progressives. Bernie Sanders has had a surge. I think you could say the best thing that ever happened to him was that heart attack, because since he got back on the campaign trail in mid-October, after that, he's been on a roll. He had and now look, Richard, he's, according to the public opinion polls, he's a front runner here, and we expect he will win the New Hampshire primary.
To that end, somebody who is going to be flying out tonight, and never a good sign, is Joe Biden. And I heard him this morning, and again, these things can be grueling, but from somebody who really thought Joe Biden, especially given that issues 1, 2, and 3 for the electorate is who's going to beat Trump for Democrats, he seemed to, if not mail it in, I was still waiting for the fight. I know one New Hampshire voter said, as hard as Trump went after Hunter Biden, I was waiting for Joe Biden, of all the Democrats, to punch back harder. It seems that other Democrats are more upset about this than even the former VP. And then when laying out his argument, he seemed to be saying, listen, you're never going to elect a socialist to some mayor from South Bend, and you don't want 4 more years of this guy. It's got to be me. I have to be your default choice. What have you seen that Biden either isn't built for or wasn't prepared for?
He just doesn't have the energy on the campaign trail, and I see a lot of him on the campaign trail, and you just don't get that energy from Joe Biden that you get from Bernie Sanders, who's actually 1 year older than Biden, or Buttigieg, or any of the other candidates. That is an issue. Biden came to this state, and right off the bat, the second day in New Hampshire after coming back from Iowa and that disappointing 4th place finish, he admitted that he suffered a gut punch in Iowa. And Friday night at the very top of that presidential debate here in New Hampshire, he said, I took a hit in Iowa, and I'm probably going to take a hit here. He has been lowering expectations nonstop. And now, of course, he's basically waving the white flag as he heads to South Carolina before the polls even close here. They'll have a kickoff contest there. South Carolina, his campaign has always considered to be their firewall. They're ready to get out of these 2 first states, Iowa and New Hampshire, which don't have large urban areas and which are predominantly white. They're looking forward to the campaign moving to Nevada, South Carolina, and the Super Tuesday states, where you have an electorate that is much more diverse. Richard, by the way, I spoke to one of his top supporters here, top Biden supporter, not so happy with the vice president taking off and leaving for South Carolina even before the polls close.
It is an interesting message to be delivering. To that end, Paul, listen, forget that what he said at the rally, 60% of it, I think somebody said, was disprovable. The crowds that lined up and stayed in the rain and the snow to get an audience, if you will, with the president, and then had to be stuck there hours later while security cleared it out. You can't minimize that. Talk about what you got to see firsthand, the appeal of the president, and then conversely, if Iowa told us one thing, it was the turnout wasn't great. Where is the enthusiasm for Democrats this time, particularly compared to the president last night in New Hampshire?
That's the biggest warning sign for Democrats right now. That not low turnout, but not record high turnout. Iowa, a few weeks before the caucuses, they were predicting the turnout could maybe reach 2008 when they set the record, when then Senator Obama of Illinois won the caucuses on the way to the White House. We didn't see it in Iowa, though, and we may not see it here in New Hampshire. It may reach or match 2016, but not much higher than that. here in New Hampshire. As for the president, yeah, I was not at the rally last night. I was at the one in Iowa a few weeks ago, but I was outside the arena earlier in the day talking to his supporters who lined up in that bitter cold rain hours and hours and hours before the president got there. Listen, these are the true believers, and the president has no issue with his base. His base is firmly with him. But Richard, he'll need more than his base to win the re-election.
That end, though, Paul, and go through the cycles, if you will, from 8 to 12 to 16 to now. What do you hear on the ground that could be a canary in the coal mine for either party, either candidates? Doesn't matter. What are you hearing that politicians would be wise to heed that maybe they don't really take into account as much as they should?
I think it's the lesson that maybe some people didn't learn in 2016 when Hillary Clinton went down to defeat, which is voters on the Democratic side, at least, they want Trump out, no doubt about that, desperately. But they maybe don't want to go back to business as usual in Washington. And that is Joe Biden's message, that he's going to bring it back to the Obama days. Well, a lot of voters, well, yes, they definitely want Trump out, but maybe they don't want to go back to what was happening during the Obama days. They do not want politics as usual, Richard.
You got an interesting night ahead of you, Paul. I appreciate you making a few minutes for us today.
Thank you. Good to join you, Richard.
All right, everyone. When we come back, we will stay in New Hampshire. We'll go to our good friend, ABC News political director Rick Klein. He'll join us to take a look at the Bloomberg effect and also the state of the Democratic Party.